Hello, I'm David Bowman, the tutoring coordinator for the BCSCR project of the Three Rivers Education Foundation. Each month, I review all of the instructional reporting forms for the tutors. And on the basis of my review for February documentation, I thought it would be appropriate to spend a little bit of time and talk to the tutor specifically and let you know what it is that I'm looking for and what types of questions am I thinking about as I'm reviewing your forms, because I can assure you that I actually look and read and reflect on every single instructional reporting form that is submitted on a monthly basis. The reason why I do this is very clear. We know without a doubt that when the tutor regularly addresses each of the 6 reading components, then we give kids the best chance to make the maximum growth possible. Really, the information is incontrovertible that that is a necessary component or a necessary part of this project in order to help kids succeed at reading. And let me show you the evidence of that. Before I show you or talk to you specifically about each of the various components, what I'm thinking about, let me show you the evidence that indicates addressing the 6 components is a necessary part of effective reading instruction. So I looked at all of the data for the fall tutoring, and we had several thousand students that were involved, several thousand data points to look at. So I looked at various populations of students, various student groupings. And I looked at those kids that were in what we call fully compliant tutoring environments, which means, a couple hours of tutoring per week. They had the pre and the post test. They had no rush flags on the post test. Everything was done according to the BCSCR model, including whether or not the tutor regularly addressed all 6 components of reading. And what we found is that in those situations where the tutor regularly addressed all 6 components of reading, that the kids made on average a 1.53 grade level increase in their reading ability, which is huge, and I'm very satisfied with that. Now, I also looked at the corresponding group. Everything is the same, except the tutor did not regularly address all 6 components of reading. Those students, on average, made a 0.6 grade level increase in their reading. That's a big difference from 1.53 to 0.68. It's a difference of almost a full year's growth. It's a 0.085 grade level difference between those 2 groups. And only one thing was different: whether or not the tutor regularly addressed all 6 components of reading. And that's the reason why I spend so much time reviewing those instructional reports. I want to know, and I want to help tutors regularly address all 6 areas, because it is the single difference between a 1.53 grade level growth and a 0.68. So that brings us to the question: as I'm reading your instructional reporting forms, what am I looking for? Because I'll often see that the tutor will say, I'm addressing phonics and phonemic awareness and fluency or whatever, and then I'll look at the activities and I will ask the question, which I hope you also ask: do these activities actually seem to promote growth in those particular reading areas? Do these instructional activities actually support the reading components that the tutor is indicating on the form? So here's how I make those determinations. We're going to walk through each of these, and let's start with the first one, phonemic awareness. So what am I looking for with phonemic awareness? I'm looking for any kinds of activities really that deal with differentiating sounds, identifying sounds, or segmenting sounds. We're taking words, we're breaking them apart. We're taking sounds and we're putting them together. We're looking at 2, 3, 4 types of sound groups, and we're studying them in a repeated fashion to help kids develop those mental patterns that help them to identify those sound groups. So really anything that deals with specific sounds or sounds within words is going to indicate instruction in phonemic awareness. Similarly, when I'm looking at phonics, I'm looking for something almost the same. I'm looking at decoding strategies. I'm looking at taking written words and breaking them apart. I'm looking at letters and combining them together into words. Anything having to do with guided oral reading, where we're stopping, where kids stumble as they're reading aloud. We're helping them to decode and study the words before we go on. Anything like that, where we're really concentrating on that connection between letter combinations and sound combinations, I'm going to say is probably addressing phonics. Now, with fluency, this is kind of a tricky one. I see many tutors indicating that they have kids reading aloud. They'll say kids read to each other, some partner reading, or they have a student read a page or a paragraph, and the next student reads, the next student reads, the next student reads, and so forth. Well, that does begin to address fluency, and I'm going to give it a pass and say, yes, the tutor is attempting to address fluency. However, what I would really like to see is that whole issue of repeated reading, where kids have a chance to read aloud, they have the teacher or they have another student pointing out areas where they have mispronounced words or skipped over words, going back, fixing those issues, and then trying again. Because one of the things that will help to develop fluency is when kids have a chance to practice doing it correctly. So if we're just reading aloud and the next one reads and so forth, it doesn't really get us to that correction. It doesn't give us to that repeating process where kids have a chance to practice doing it right. But anything around that whole reading aloud and the oral decoding is going to go under fluency. Now with vocabulary, it could be a couple of different things. It could be predefined or predetermined words that we're going to study. It can also be the process of learning new words. And I'd like to see both. Although the fact of the matter is, there's just too many words in the English language for us to be able to teach them all. So the primary emphasis can be, and perhaps should be, on helping kids understand the process for learning new words. Not just go look it up, but really looking at the context and the word parts and word analysis. So when I'm looking for vocabulary activities, I'm looking for activities that do all those types of things. Word meanings within a context, looking at word parts or a word analysis study, repeated use of target words, if there's a predefined list, and we're going to use those words in many ways and in many different contexts. And of course, helping kids to discover that, understand that whole discovery process. All of that goes into vocabulary. So if I see any activities that do those types of things, then I'm going to give it a check for vocabulary. Now with comprehension, when I'm looking for comprehension, I'm looking for any activities that deal with analysis, reflection, or interpretation of the content. So just reading it aloud is not that. And to some degree, just answering some worksheet questions is really also not that, though I typically give it a pass. What we're really looking for is any activities where the kids have to think about what they've read, discuss what they've read, reflect on it, whether it's in speaking and discussion or whether it's writing or some kind of graphical organizer. So whether it's oral or it's visual, if it's around that analysis, reflection, interpretation, then it's going to fit under the category of comprehension. And finally, oral language development. Almost identical to what I'm looking for with comprehension. But here we're looking at language use in a context. How is language used in a particular context? Why is language used in that way? So if we're analyzing the content, why did the author write this way? What do you think this character meant when he says such and such? How do people interact differently in a different context? What does this person do that's different than what you do? Any of those types of things that really make us dig into the content and look at it from the characters or the author's point of view, all of that is going to fit under oral language development. Whether it's as simple as how do we say certain things in this context to what is a person implying when he or she says or writes this. all of that goes into oral language development. So if I see any activities around that, I'm going to give it a check for oral language development. So those are all 6 areas of what I'm thinking about as I'm looking at your instructional reporting forms. But I'm going to throw in one more item here, and that is how we are combining skill sets together. Because as you can see, each one of these skills also relates to and is influenced by other skills. So we never teach skills in isolation. Now, we might have a particular focus. We're going to focus on fluency. We're going to focus on vocabulary. But we will provide that instruction best when we provide a more comprehensive set of activities that address multiple areas. Now, you may have seen this before. I've sent around some cheat sheets. I sent it to the coordinators. They sent it out to the tutors that, among other things, talks about how we group skills together. So you see on the left-hand side the 6 components: phonemic awareness, phonics fluency, and so forth. You see on the right-hand side other skill sets that are taught effectively in conjunction with the primary skill we're focusing on. So if we're focusing on comprehension, then we're also going to provide some study of vocabulary and fluency and oral language development and so forth. So I always caution tutors, and I caution coordinators when they're looking at your forms also, be careful when we see that the tutor is only indicating one particular skill set for the day, because there's a good chance that the activities also provide instruction in these other areas, and really they should. The other thing that I look at, sort of a red flag, is if I see the tutor is indicating all components every session. Although I understand that it is possible, and perhaps even preferable, it is quite possible to address every skill set in every session, but I'm going to look very carefully and say, is this really happening? Because I do know we have said so many times that the skill sets are important and we need to address all of the reading skills. But if I see it happening in every session, I'm going to look at those activities pretty carefully, and I'm going to ask the question that you also need to ask, which is, do the instructional activities actually support learning of all those components? And hopefully they do, right? Hopefully they do, with a nice, robust set of activities that cover a lot of different areas. Of course it's possible. But that's the question to ask. As you are writing down your description of the sessions, do those actually support the reading components that you have indicated over on the left side of the form? Well, now you've got a good idea. What am I looking for? So hopefully it'll help you to get alignment between the activities and the skill sets that you describe. And of course, as you're filling those out, on a session by session basis, start to look for gaps. Say, oh my goodness, I haven't put any checks in phonics and phonemic awareness for the last couple of sessions. I need to make sure that I include that in the next session. So you can do all of that reflection about your own instruction yourself long before it ever comes to us. But at least now I hope you've got an idea of the types of things that we're looking for, and you can use this to improve and enhance your own instruction. So if you need more information, there's a few places to look. Of course, the tutor manual has all of this information and quite a bit more, plus activities and strategies. So if you're not sure how to address a particular area, you can always go into the tutor manual. You can go onto the tutor website, and there are sample activities there for you. Fluency, 4th grade, here are some things you can try. So a lot of resources are available to you in those 2 sites. But if you need additional assistance, you need somebody to sort of sit with you and kind of walk you through it, you can always contact your regional coordinator. I hope you found this useful. Our main goal above anything else is to make sure that the kids have the best chance to make the most growth possible. It's the student outcomes that are more important to us than anything else that we're doing here, and you're a critical piece of that. I thank you very much for that. I thank you for serving as a tutor for BCSCR. Again, I'm David Bowman with BCSCR. Thank you very much.